welcome back to another Field to Food episode of Tale of the Tines, where we highlight a deer from our past that has some kind of significance, whether it's a great story, a great memory, a great deer, or in this case, I think all of the above. So this one was mine from a couple of years back. Shoot, I want to say, I think 2019 was this deer. This was an archery deer, private land here in Ohio. And we normally start this off by going through the story and then kind of filter through some questions from the guys and kind of round off with some stuff here at the end. So I guess I'll start from the front. This was, I want to say, 17th or 18th of November. It was a hot day. It was towards...
Seems to be the norm in Ohio anymore.
Right.
Yep. In November.
I went out for a morning hunt. I was hunting a bedding area that time of the year during the rut. I wasn't hunting a pinch point. I was pretty much set up right in the middle of the bedding area, knowing that with the sun coming up, which was a low breeze day and it was going to be a hot sunny day, my thermals were going to rise and I was pretty much going to catch movement on the outside of the bedding area and hopefully get a shot as they came into it. I was hoping that, because it was a doe bedding area, that the bucks would be following them in. I caught a glimpse of this deer right around, I want to say 8:30, 9 o'clock on a hillside behind me, and it's real thick cover in that area. He was chasing a doe, and he had 3 or 4 smaller bucks with him and chased them past me to what I figured out to be a couple hundred yards. At that point, I thought that this deer was out of my life forever. All I saw was tines running through real thick cover and a bunch of grunting, and they just in and out. And I was thought, well, that was cool to see. I'll never see that deer again.
Yeah.
And then I had all day to hunt. I got out of my stand. I knew that where I was, I wasn't seeing what I wanted to see, so I needed to move locations. I went back to field edge, and I was kind of debating between 2 or 3 different spots. There was a bedding area up on top of the hill that I knew of, and there was a pinch point at the base of the hill that I knew of, and I didn't know where to go. So I remember sitting there on top of the hill on the field edge looking for some divine intervention. Literally, I was sitting there praying. I was like, God, tell me where to go. And I looked up, and there was a vapor trail from an airplane that went straight to the bedding area. And I was like, that's my sign.
Which is where you were that morning?
No,
different bedding area.
Yeah, the one that was up on top of the hill.
Okay.
So it was, at that point, hot. It was crunchy. So I started walking up rest of the hill, down the hill, to the creek. And right when I got to the creek, I saw this deer. And all I saw was the shift of him with the doe bedded in the middle of open hardwoods. There was no cover on the ground.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. I think that's where that doe got hot. I think she was tired, and she just wanted to lie down.
Yeah.
So I was...
It's a big, like, wide open woods, or...
Big
like
white...
little
it was old forest.
Patch.
No, it was old forest. It was,
Okay.
it was probably 5 or 6 acres of just open hardwoods.
Okay.
And I could see all the way up into the bedding area, up to the cover of it. And then there was me at the creek, probably 250 yards down from that bedding area, and they were smack dab right in the middle.
Okay.
I knew I could not get up any closer. There was no cover.
Yeah.
It was...
He didn't see you yet?
No.
Okay.
There was cover in the bottom to where once you get out of the creek bed and start going up the bank, then they can see you. So I was real quiet getting down in there. It probably took me, I want to say 45 minutes to go 50 yards. Like I was just going real slow. I was like, I have all day to hunt. I just have to get to the right spot at the right time. Well, I didn't make it because I got stuck in the creek bed. I saw them, and so I just stood there. And I was weighing my options. I was like, I can't go this way. It's hot out. I'm in water. At some point, that doe is going to get thirsty. She's probably thirsty then, just didn't want to move.
Yeah.
All I have to do is predict which way they're going to come down. And there was a little ravine. I mean, maybe 3 feet on each bank going up towards that bedding area. I'm like, if a doe's going to pick cover, she's going to pick that rather than going through the open woods. So I got myself within, I want to say probably 20 yards of that. I might have been a little further back, probably 25. And I stood there, leaned up against a tree for 3.5 hours on the ground with the bow.
No kidding.
Just watching them. And that was like, the colors, the deer, the other smaller bucks, that was, I think, a small 8 and a forky and maybe a 6. Just watching this little group of deer and then this big guy just interact throughout the day, because the little bucks would try and get up and try and get close to the doe. He would get up, he would push them out. It was just amazing to watch that.
Would he just push them out and lay back down?
Yeah. As long as she didn't move, he didn't care. He would just push those little bucks away. But they weren't going to go anywhere because she was in heat.
Yeah.
So they stuck around.
You just had to hope they didn't come downwind.
I had good wind. So up the hill was them.
Yeah. How far were they from you?
120, 150, somewhere in there.
Yeah,
It's kind of hard to tell. It's 8 years ago at this point.
Yeah.
But the wind was cutting across this way. So there was no way that they were going to wind me. I knew I was safe there. And even if the wind died, I was in the creek, so my thermals were going to drop down there and follow down creek. So I felt really comfortable there. Right about that last, I want to say, hour of daylight, and it was just at the tip of that hour. Like, it wasn't close to dark at all yet. She stood up, and I could tell that she was going to come down and get water. I had just enough bank to make my adjustment, because she went actually further past that little small ravine than I thought she was going to. She went about 30 yards past that. So I kind of creeped down real quick, made my adjustment. It was a guess.
Stayed in the creek bed?
Yeah, it was just a guess. It was still wet in there. It wasn't that dry. We still had some moisture, so I was able to move quietly. It was soft dirt bottom creek bed.
Yeah.
Not a lot of gravel. So once I made my adjustment, I had no cover. I was where I was, but I figured as long as she didn't spook, he wasn't going to spook.
Yeah.
His eyes were on her at that point.
Yeah. So she came down, she drank water, and then she crossed the creek, and he came across the lip at a perfect 30 yards. Actually, yeah. So I did shoot a deer at 30 yards. now
I was just thinking that. I was like, this guy lied.
Last podcast. Okay, so she didn't see me. She got into a little bit of more floor on the other side of the creek.
How far was she? She was at 30 as well?
30.
Okay.
Like, he was
right on
her.
Yeah, probably about 10 yards, but was not leaving that trail.
Okay.
He saw me. He had me dead to rights, but she kept walking. And I could see him, like, he wasn't, like, looking at me. He was side-eye. I mean, I could watch the deer's eye go back and forth between me and the doe. So he finally took a couple more steps, because he was up the bank, I want to say probably elevation-wise 10 or 15 feet above me. Well, once he finally made that step down, I was at full draw once I saw him get past the tree. I don't know how long. I'd like to say it was like 4 or 5 minutes, but I know that's not true. Like, I went through the alphabet twice. I was trying to distract myself of holding the bow back for so long. And then I was really shaky, and I unfortunately spine shot him. Dropped.
Yeah.
Had to go up, second arrow, but had him down.
Yeah.
So that's the story of this deer. But the significance specifically of this deer was 2 things. One, shooting a deer of this class
on the ground.
Never felt anything like that ever before in my life. Like,
that's a game changer for sure.
Yeah.
I haven't killed one on the ground yet. And I want to. No.
I've killed some on the ground.
I've been sitting with a gun, but I want to kill. I want to do one. I want to do it with a bow.
I've killed a couple off the ground, but nothing of size, younger does.
Yeah, you kill a big buck like this on the ground.
You're on his playing field at that point. You're not. Yeah.
It was. I felt so exposed, but so in control at the same time.
Yeah.
And it was a very unique experience, and I will never forget.
Well,
that.
I mean, it's smart. You knew he was on that doe, and he stayed with her. And as long as she didn't pick you off, he probably could have picked you off. But I highly doubtful he was going to leave that doe.
You'd have had to do jumping jacks probably.
Especially with those other bucks in the area, he was not going to leave that doe unattended.
Yeah. Did you have pictures or anything of this deer? Or?
No, so that's one of the things that I love about it is I don't like having history with deer.
Yeah.
I like being surprised. I like getting an area right rather than a deer right.
Yeah.
And then this guy fell right into that. And actually, earlier throughout that year, I was chasing a buck that I nicknamed Ohio, and I missed that deer 3 times.
I wouldn't tell anybody that.
What are you doing, Dane?
Yeah, it was a bad year up until that. So having this deer break for me was actually really nice. But the second thing that this thing led to, as far as significance goes, is that this deer is what started Field of Food.
Really?
Knowing that, having knowledge of how to hunt a deer like that from the ground, which being in that situation was lucky or divine intervention if you go off of the smoke trail from the plane. Like, no matter what, there was something that led me to this deer, and then I knew that I needed to start something bigger and just explore something different.
I feel like if you had been videoing at the time, you probably could have videotaped that pretty easily.
Absolutely.
You just had to have your camera facing down that creek bed.
Yep.
You know?
Wait for him to step into frame.
Once he gets in frame, boom.
Yeah.
So I guess you could say this is the Field of Food buck.
Yeah. At that point, I nicknamed him Opportunity because that was the only opportunity I didn't miss that year. But maybe Field of Food buck might make more sense at this point.
No, he's a beautiful deer. He's got super long tines. Other than that G4, he's very symmetrical.
Oh, he's perfect except that G4.
And that busted 2.
Yeah.
But that's
his threes go forward and in. Looking at him from here, I have a way different angle than you guys.
Yeah, I'm just kind of going on the side profile where they both of his threes, they both come up and they hook. Both of his 2s are very straight. That main beam's just got the slightest little crook in it, but other than that, he's almost picture perfect.
Just a little bladed there at the end too on that one.
Yep.
That I really admire looking at that whenever I do.
Yeah, it really stinks this is busted because you got 2 freaking 13-inch G2s.
So that
huge.
that 13 point that I have upstairs that you made mention of, that you're like, man, if this one wasn't busted, he'd be so much bigger. I love the bust because I get to sit there and look at it and think, how did he do that?
Yeah,
what was he doing?
A sense of wonder.
That sign off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, was he fighting? Was he rubbing? If he was fighting, who? Did I see the buck that beat him? Did he beat that buck?
Yeah.
I love the broken tines.
I'd like to say I do, but then my buck this year was 1 inch shy of being a booner, so if he hadn't had 2 busted tines, he would have been 170-inch deer.
Yeah. Busted tines are stupid.
But no, he was cool. He's got it like that's chipped off there, and he's got it on this side too. It's chipped a little bit.
It is neat because it always just makes you wonder.
Yeah.
Like, what would do that, you know?
Yeah.
You get a deer of this caliber, and you'd think, oh, something bigger must have been fighting him, or the same size.
Yeah. There's at least another. I got him kind of guesstimated while we were talking at like 149. That's just rough, but like, yeah, he's not going to break tines fighting a 4-point.
No.
So he's fighting something of size.
So earlier in that season, it was probably middle of October, I was on the same property with my dad. We'd just gotten done with the evening hunt. We were sitting by our trucks. I think we were drinking a beer, honestly. And we heard deer fighting in the woods.
There you go. Could have been him.
Could have been him.
Yeah, never know.
Never know.
Opportunity was knocking.
Oh, boy.
That's what you get from the hair side of the table.
Anyways, so to follow suit with our tail and tine stuff, the first person that I called after I shot this deer was actually my brother, and he was at home with his wife Carly, and they were one property over where they used to live, and they drove down on the 4-wheeler, and that was the first time that I had the experience of a sister-in-law standing over top of a deer. Yeah. So that was pretty cool for that aspect, and that was, shoot, if it was that time, that was right before she got pregnant, or she might have even been pregnant at that point, to be honest. So that was prior to them having kids.
Yeah.
Big change there.
Yeah, it's a nice deer.
Thanks.
Beautiful.
I would have mounted it.
I get that all the time from you for a couple of the deer that I have here in the house. And
Yeah, you have 3 or 4 deer that I would have mounted for sure.
I love the Euro mounts for this for a reason.
Yep,
is that you can pick them up, you can play with them, you can look at them, you can feel them, you can pass them off to a buddy. Like it's a good feeling.
Yeah. Even if say he had a bunch of character, kickers or split G2s, you could just lift them off of this and turn him and point, and you can't do that with a shorter mount.
No.
Because they don't eat up so much real estate in the wall when they're just a skull.
Right.
Yeah, that's
room
true.
for more deer.
And real estate in the pocket.
That is true.
Yeah. They're not cheap these days. Having them done like this.
$100 versus, or doing them yourself, but versus
a good
$700 to $800 now.
Or up.
Yeah.
I know guys getting $1,000 for shoulder mounts.
Yeah.
No, he's a great deer. Carries his mass pretty good the whole way out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a mature deer.
Like you said, he's not crazy wide, but he's got pretty good beams on him.
Yeah. I would say he's right about that 150-inch mark.
Yeah.
I have to put a tape on him.
I think I guessed a 4-year-old on the hoof when I had him. He was one of the heavier deer that I've ever had to get out of the woods. He was hard.